1 2 1 2. All right, how do I sound? Am I sounding okay? Okay. Welcome. Let's get started. Let me turn this on. It's cold. It's cold. It's raining. It's late. And it's funny. The series is bedtime stories, but I upload it after I go to bed, so it's like I'm reading it before, right? So I'm thinking maybe upload time. Because if people are gonna listen to it at night, I don't know. I'm just trying to see. My computer's acting up. I'm just trying to see what's reasonable. You know, if people want to listen to it when they sleep, it's there. So I believe this is part 5, right? Let me double check. We are on. Boom, 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 boom. Yes, part 5. Okay. So welcome back to House of Leaves. House of Leaves. Bedtime Stories. Read along part 5. Let's take our notes. So, chapter 5. We're in chapter 6 now, right? Where's my card? Yeah, we're in chapter 6. Okay, so chapter 5. We're gonna go through the preamble and everything, and we're gonna talk about what happened in the last chapter, which is chapter 5. So we have Haas, and I did go back and listen to it. When I read and I'm taking it in, it's hard to like comprehend at the same time, or think what's like happening, because there was a moment, which I'll go into detail when I talk about it, and there was a moment when I'm reading, I'm like, what happened, why is this happening now, and why did we just move on? But going back and listening, I was like, okay, it makes more sense now. So if you're following better than I am, good on you. It's just like, it's late, and yesterday again, super tired. I wanted to do this. This is going to be an hour, so last time it was 2 hours because the chapter was really long. We, at the end of the last video, I showed the next chapter was 3 pages. So I don't know how long the chapters are going to be, but giving 1 hour of story and then some preamble. So we have Haas, we have Navidson, and then we have, I really wanted to go through and see if we can find it. We have Karen. And then we have the kids, Chad and Daisy. And then we have Tom, who's Navidson's Will, but I just call him Navidson. Or Navi, because that's what Karen calls him. It could be Navy, but I say Navi. And then who else? There's, I want to say Relston or Reston is the engineer who has no legs. Engineer. My hand is not ready to be writing with. And then we have the house. So this chapter 5, revolved around here. Can you see the notes? Are the notes legible? That doesn't matter. Okay, chapter 5 revolved around echoes. Now, when it started, the opening quote was very, it was something like, someone was alone, so they invited whatever it was there. So we can go back real quick. And it was, opening quote is, and I want to, like, maybe next time I'll start doing this. Raju welcomed the intrusion, something to relieve the loneliness of the place. So that really didn't provide anything, but the opening quotes always give like a thematic like encompass of a theme for the chapter. So you had loneliness, right? So it said loneliness. I think I spelled that wrong. Loneliness, and then intrusion, and he welcomed it. Welcomed. I can't spell. right now. My hand can't write either. Okay. So it goes into it starts very hard with the breakdown of Echo. And they broke it down mythological, myth, and then science. And the myth had to do with the goddess Echo, and she was punished. It was a punishment because she helped Zeus with a love interest. So there was Zeus, and then there was another one, narcissism. I want to say Narcissus. I don't know if that's the god, but narcissism was the other side of the story. And so, keeping those two sides, it was like something to do with Pan, the story of Pan, and the story of it was either like Narcissus, like pretty much saying the echo's never the same, like depending on who hears it. And then science broke down how long it took for echoes to travel. You can gauge how far something is by how quickly the echo comes back to you. And I think it was 56.5 feet for sound. I can't write or spell. 56.5 feet for sound to reverberate back to you is the shortest distance for an echo. And I'm trying to remember if there's any any scientific theory or anything that stood out in that moment. So that was the foundation of the chapter, right? Was the echo. And there were examples. Haas sort of went on a weird tangent about it because there was a passage written by Miguel de Cervantes, who wrote Don Quixote, which I think my Don Quixote book's behind me, and another passage written later, and they were word for word the same identical version. And when I last video, when I was going over it, it was like, okay, like an observation, but it was an echo. Like it was saying like that's an echo. Like stuff echoes in history. Like he did it and then someone else did it. So it's like echoing throughout. That's how I interpret that. But Haas is starting out like he's I don't want to say hallucinating because that seems too simple, but he's in a different mindset. So we'll put different mindset. He is like more not schizo, but like he's very like dodgy. I don't know. There are moments where he talks about the echoes, and then he's going throughout his own life. And it introduces Thumper, his love interest, who introduces Thumper, who we've talked about in like chapter 1, and it's his boss's girlfriend, and she's a stripper, and he dreams about her, and I would say obsessed. Let's say obsessed. But there's no real echo to like her in that point. But he's like he's thinking of like harming his boss, harming boss. And then he's showing up for work on time because he wants to see Thumper, and he's obsessed with her. He thinks she's the most beautiful woman ever. But that's not what the main thing with Haas is. Like that's like on the side. Haas in his version, or in his point of view, he has to get materials from the basement. As he goes and gets materials from the basement, he slips and falls on his way back up, and he drops ink, and it falls all over him, splashes all over him, and he's scared. But then it's when he comes back up, I don't think it happened. And I'm trying to recall that. But there was a moment where and this is what I meant when like I didn't comprehend what was going on at the time. He said his boss told him to do something, and then he said I twisted his head off as soon as he told me. Oh, he critiqued his sketches, and then he twisted his boss's head off, and he's like, I killed him. And it goes in the next sentence. But then it's like, oh, he was visualizing killing him for critiquing his thing. So he's having like these super realistic visions, I guess. They're not visions, because visions would mean that they're going to happen. But it's hallucinating. Like he's imagining these things happening, and he's writing it down as if they are happening. And that's his point of view. So we'll write hallucinations and hallucination. And I think that's pretty much it. Like I don't recall anything much from Haas's perspective in this chapter. He was obsessed with Thumper. It shows how they met, the times, and he says he doesn't talk to her. He hasn't talked to her in a long time, or he barely talks to her because she never comes in. When she does, it's always like cordial. But I think there was a passage where they were in bed, but that may have been hallucinated, because we know that's what he can do, or what he's experiencing from reading this House of Leaves. So Novitzin Will is still there, obsessed with the hallway. And now his friend Reston, the engineer, is coming over, and they're just working on it. And there's no answer. The engineer's like, I don't know what's going on. So engineer, no answer. You can't solve it. So they let it go. And then Novitzin and Tom is still there helping with the answer and the children, because what's going on with Novitzin is that Karen and Will are having marital problems, and they are not intimate, and they are distant. Like there's no real talking. They start separating, and Novitzin is just trying to figure out why his house is the way it is. Now, given all this is the state of everything. The children are more towards Tom. Like they're still playing. And while Will and Karen drift further and further apart, there comes a moment where they are both in separate rooms, but they hear their children scream. But the screams are far away, and they don't know why. So they both run down to the living room where they're hearing the screams, and another door has appeared. So in the first floor. So now we have a first floor. And right now I just have I think the first floor is more like here, and then you have the living room, right? You have the living room. To me, it's more open. And it can be like this, right? And then this would be the kitchen to the back. And it probably is described, and I'd have to go back and read it. So let's say this is the living room, because there are also stairs in the living room to go upstairs. And then this is the kitchen back here. And we'll say these are stairs, right? Just for now, because I don't know where those stairs are. And this is more kitchen. And they get to the living room, and a door has appeared. And I think he said it's on the west. Oh, this would be the west, and this would be the north. Or if I could be reversed. Anyway, a door appears, and in this door, there's a hallway. And this is where we get the 5-minute hallway video. And then the children are in here. It's completely dark in this hallway. And Novitzin goes in, Will goes in, and goes and gets his children. As he does this, we find out that Karen has severe claustrophobia. Claustrophobia. Probably spelled it wrong. And she tells Will, don't go in there, please. Like, never go in there. And Will says, okay, I won't. But now he's like, he wants answers. He wants to know why. But Tom, seeing the stress and everything, he takes care of it, and he puts this barricade door over it with like steel rods, and it has a 4 locking mechanism with color-coded keys. So one day they have a dinner, and the dinner is with people they know. And someone makes a joke like, you have a real problem or something like you can't fix. And he's like, I'll show you something. He says, he's a photographer. Will's a photographer, so in his friend, it doesn't give a name. It just says blank in the book. He says, I'm surprised you don't have a dark room because you're a photographer. You'd always be in there when we were younger in college or something like that. And he's like, you want to see a dark room? I'll show you a dark room. And Karen's like, don't do it. But Will goes, opens this door, shows him the hallway. And then that causes a big explosion. The guests leave. Karen says, you know what? You love your hallway so much, you can sleep downstairs, sleep on the couch, and I'll sleep upstairs. So at this time, Will can't sleep. He wants to go in the hallway. So he goes. Now, when they first looked in the hallway, it was 10 feet long, right? And now it is, I think it gets bigger, if I recall correctly. And if it gets bigger, he sees that, and that's what draws him in. But when he gets down, he also sees like there's a corridor at the end that goes to the right. And in this corridor, there are rooms and doors that don't have anything, right? And it just keeps going. And he doesn't know where he is until he gets to this very end of this passageway. And at the very end, he finds this. It's dark. His flashlight isn't doing anything. He has his camera. And this is the video, Exploration A. Exploration A. Meaning there could be more explorations. So he gets to like the part of this entry it's huge, right? And it's like 15 feet wide, 15 feet tall, 15 feet tall, and 10 feet wide. And he's just standing there. And he doesn't know what to do, so he goes in. And as he goes in, he starts to hear like a monster. He hears growling. He feels something, and it's in the distance, so he can't hear it. And he wants to get out, so he starts yelling. And he's doing this because he can't find his way back to this door. So he makes his way to a wall. He finds a wall using the echoing. He uses his own echo to find a wall, going back to the main theme of echo. And he puts a penny down on the ground that he had in his pocket, and he has to go left or right, to find where he was. So he goes left, and he can't find the main door he came in. So he starts going right. But when he starts going right, he's like, he knows where his penny is. He's like, I walked this far, it should be this far back. But he gets there quicker than he left it in distance. So he's confused, and then he starts hearing a cry, and he follows that, and it's the cry of his daughter. So he makes it back, and his daughter's standing in the entryway of the hallway, and she's like, I couldn't sleep, but it helped him get out because he was following her voice. But it showed a couple things. It showed that either the house is alive in itself, like it was like maze-like changing, or it's just bigger than what it is. Like he doesn't know what's going on. In my head, I'm like, it's alive, and there's something down there too. Who knows what's down there? not, I don't think it's like some devil demon thing, but it's just like, could it be your own imagination? Is it your fears? What is it? And that's just a real rough preamble to chapter 5. And I really liked it. I think that's a lot was told. Tom left, and then he came back because of the hallway. There was a scene where he was, laying outside, and the kids were playing with him and everything. So it sort of showed like the kids were filling in a void with Tom because the parents were being distant. And it was and there was also a weird thing where Chad asked his mom when he became president, or how he could become president. She's like, just keep doing what you're doing and get good grades. And he told him, I want to make you vice president. His mom's like, make me Secretary of Defense. To me, that was weird. I was like, okay. So, 20-minute preamble. You'll get 1 hour. And here's the disclaimer. This is for educational purposes, in a sense where it's my first time reading it. And it's not a performance. I want to provide a good experience. Like, if you've read the book and you know what's going to happen, enjoy someone going through it. If you haven't read the book and you want like a very basic interpretation along the way, then that's what this is here for. Or if you just want to listen to this as you're going to bed or doing something, and you heard about the book and now you can talk about it, that's what this is. It's a helpful tool, and it's not a performance. I am making jokes. I take pauses, and I what's the other thing I do? I also like suck at reading too sometimes. Like, I just get lost. So we are going to start. I sort of want to keep track of the mistakes. Like, I need a highlighter and sort of see if the mistakes spell anything or make any new messages, and maybe it could be something, because I feel like I'm missing a lot of little details, and the way the story weaves itself with the themes, like with the echo and the monster. Because when Will was in the cave, or not, in the maze area and underneath his house, or in the house, it was like at the same time Haas was, when he was getting the tools, fell, and it said he drenched him in ink and he felt like a monster, but then it didn't happen. So he's like, I shit myself and this and that, and then he came back upstairs from the thing. So it's a lot going on, and it's late, so when I'm reading this I'm like, oh man. So that's what's going on. Let's get started. I don't know what else to say, and I'm gonna start making, that's what I was gonna say. These will be under educational category, so you can watch them in like a school, because sometimes I think schools don't let you watch YouTube videos. So just my little point of view. All right, let's get started. I wasn't planning on reading tonight, so that's why I'm like, my brain's kind of not fully on right now, and I wanted to wake up early and then do this and have it ready for tomorrow. But I'm like, I'm up, I'll do it. 1 hour and knock it out with no water. All right. Chapter 6. Animals lack, this is the quote, animals lack a symbolic identity and the self-consciousness that goes with it. They merely act and move reflexively as they are driven by their instincts. If they pause at all, it is only a physical pause. Inside they are anonymous, and even their faces have no name. They live in a world without time, pulsating, as it were, in a state of dumb being. The knowledge of death is reflective and conceptual, and animals are spared it. They live and they disappear with the same thoughtlessness. A few minutes of fear, a few seconds of anguish, and it is over. But live a whole lifetime the fate of death haunting one's dreams and even the most sun-filled days, that's something else. By Ernest Becker. While the pragmatic space of animals is a function of inborn instincts, man has to learn what orientation he needs in order to act. Christian Norberg Schultz. So given these two, those two quotes, and then this is the chapter. So, I'm just going to read the chapter and see what is going to happen, and we can talk about all that. When Hillary the gray-coated Siberian Husky appears at the end of the Novitzin record, he is no longer a puppy. A couple of years have passed. Something forever watchful has taken up residence in his eyes. He may be playful with those he knows, but whenever strangers wander too close, they invariably hear a growl rising from somewhere deep in his throat, a little like distant thunder, warning them away. Mallory the tabby cat vanishes completely, and no mention is made about what happened to him. His disappearance remains a mystery. One thing, however, is certain. The house played a very small part in both their histories. The incident took place on August 11, 1990, a week after Will Novitzin's secret exploration of the hallway. Saturday morning cartoons blare from the kitchen television. Chad and Daisy munch down their breakfast, and Karen stands outside smoking a cigarette. The topic of smoking a cigarette, talking on the phone with Audrey McCullough, her shelf-building accomplice. The topic of the moment is feng shui, and all it has failed to do. No matter how many ceramic turtles or wooden ducks, goldfish, celestial dragons, or bronze lions I put in this goddamn house, she rants, it still keeps throwing off this awful energy. I need to find a psychic, or an exorcist, or a really good real estate agent. Meanwhile, in the living room, Tom helps Novitzin take some still shots of the hallway using a strobe. Suddenly, somewhere in the house, there is a loud yowl and bark. An instant later, Mallory comes screaming into the living room with Hillary nipping at his tail. It is not the first time they have involved themselves in such a routine. The only exception is that on this occasion, after dashing up and over the sofa, both puppy and cat head straight down the hallway and disappear into darkness. Novitzin probably would have gone in after them, had he not instantly heard barks outside, followed by Karen's shouts accusing him of letting the animals out when on that day they were supposed to stay in. What the hell? We hear Novitzin mutter loudly. Surely enough, Hillary and Mallory are in the backyard. Mallory up a tree, Hillary howling grandly over his achievement. For something so startling, it seems surprising how little has been made of this event. Bernard Porch, in his 4,000-page treatise on the Novitzin record, devotes only a third of a sentence to the subject. Strange how the house won't support the presence of animals, would be, I think, the input. Mary Winmut leaves us with just one terse question. So what's the deal with the pets? Even Novitzin himself, the consummate investigator, never revisits the subject. Who knows what might have been discovered if he had? Regardless, Holloway soon arrives, and any understanding that might have been gained by further analyzing the strange friendship between animals and the house is passed over in favor of human exploration. End notes. And then let's see. Okay, these are just sightings, and then this is footnote 82. Strange how Zampano also fails to comment on the inability of animals to wander those corridors. I believe there's a great deal of significance in this discovery. Unfortunately, Zampano never returns to the matter, and while I would like to offer you my own interpretation, I am a little high and a lot of drunk, trying to determine what set me off in the first place on this private little homebound binge. For one thing, Thumper came into the shop today. Ever since I fell down the stairs, so he did fall down the stairs, things have changed there. My boss kind of tiptoes around me, playing all low-key and far off. His demeanor probably matching his old junkie days. Even his friends keep their distance. Everyone, for the most part, just leaving me alone to sketch and solder, though I'm sketching far less these days. I mean, with all this writing. Anyway, Thumper has actually been by a few times by my incomprehensible shyness persists. By a few times, but my persists, forbidding me to oversummon forbidding me to ever summon up more than the occasional intelligible sentence. Recently, though, I did get this crazy idea. I decided to go out on a limb and show her that sappy little bit I wrote about her. You know, with all the coastal norths and August sun and scent of the pine tree stuff, even the Lucy part. I just put it in an envelope and carried it around with me until she dropped by and then handed it to her without a word. I don't know what I expected, but she opened it right on the spot and read it and laughed, and then my boss grabbed it and sort of winced. Now look who's the dumb mutant, he shuddered. And that was that. Thumper handed me her flip-flops and Adidas sweatpants and stretched out on the chair. I felt like such an idiot. Lute had warned me I'd be certifiable if I showed it to her. Maybe I am. I actually believed it would touch her in some absurd way, but to hear her laugh like that really fucked me up. I should have stayed away from such flights of fancy. Stuck to my regular made-up stories. I did my best to hide in the back, though I was too scared to go too far back because of the storeroom. Then right before she left, Thumper came over and handed me her card. "Call me sometime," she said with a wink. "You're cute." My life instantly changed. I thought. I told Lude. He told me to call her at once. I waited. Then I reconsidered. Then I postponed. Finally, at exactly 22 past 3 in the morning, I dialed. It was a beeper. I punched in my number. Brother, what's with 3 in the morning in this book? There's been 3 instances so far, and one was 4 in the morning. She's a stripper, I reasoned. Strippers live late. An hour passed. I started drinking. I'm still drinking. She hasn't called. She isn't going to call. I feel dead. Hillary and Mallory, I suddenly envy them. I wonder if Novitzin did too. I bet Zampano envied them. I need to get away. Zampano liked animals. Far away. All those cats he would talk to in that weedy courtyard, at dawn, at night. So many shades slinking out from under that dusty place like years. His years, could they be like my years too? Though certainly not so many. Not like him. Years and years of them, always rubbing up against his legs. And I see it all so clearly now. Static announcements that yes. How shocking. They still are there. Disconnected but vital. What? I see it all so clearly now. Static announcements that yes. Now, how shocking. They still are there. Disconnected but vital. The way memories reveal their life by simply appearing, sprinting out from under the shadows. Pause, patter, pause, pause. Pausing then to rub against our legs. Zap. Senile sparks perhaps, but yes, still there. And I'm thinking, has another missing year resolved in song? Though let me not get too far from myself. They were after all only cats. Quadrupled mice devouring moat chasing shades, felis catus, with very little to remind them of themselves or their past or even their tomorrows, especially when the present burns hot with play, their pursuits and their fear, a bright flash to pursue. Sun a star on nothing's back, a dark slash to escape. There are always predators. The spry interplay of hidden things and visible wings flung upon that great black sail of rods and cones, thin and fractionary, a covenant of light, arc for the instant, echoing out of the dark and the other, harmonizing with the crackback crisp tricks of every broken leaf of grass or displaced stick, and so thrust by shadow and the vague hope of color into rhapsody of motion and meaning, albeit momentary, pupil pulling wider still and darker, receiving all of it, and even more of it, though still only beholding some of it, until the frenzy of reception, this moat-clawing, hawk-fearing shade loses itself in temporary madness, leaping, springing, flinging itself after it all, as if it were possessed, and it is, as if that kind of physical response could approximate the witnessed world, which it can't, though very little matters enough to prevent the trial of which is to say, in the end, they are only cats, but cats too talk to just the same before in their weaving and wending. They kilkenny disappear, just as they first appeared, out of nowhere, vanishing back into the nowhere. Tales from some great story we will never see, but one day just might imagine, which in the gray of gentler eves will prove far more than any of us could ever need. Enough, we will shout. Enough, our bellies full, our hearts full, our ages full, fullness and greater fullness and even more fullness. How then We'll laugh and forget how the imagining has already left us, slinking back into that place of urban barley, grass, fennel and wheat, or just plain hay, golden hay. Where? Hay. Hay. Hay, hay. Hay days gone by. Bye, gone way, way away. And what of dogs, you ask? Well, there are no dogs, except for the Pekingese, but that's another story. One I cannot tell. It's too dark and difficult and without whim. And if you didn't notice, I'm in a whimsical, inconsequential frame of mind right now, talking, scribbling, aimlessly and strangely about cats, enjoying all the rules in this school of whim, the play of it. Where have I moved? What have I muttered? Who have I met? The frolic and the drift as I go thinking now, tripping really over the notion of 80 or more Zampano's dusty cats, for no particular relevant reason. Which must implicitly mean that no, it cannot be raining cats and dogs due to the dust, so much of it, on the ground, about the weeds, in the air. So therefore, ergo, thus, and this is Braille. Oh, not Braille. It might be Braille because it's like in parentheses a dot, a little raised dot, and a dot, and then two dots. No dogs, no Pekingese, just the courtyard. Zampano's courtyard. On a mad lost noonday, wild with years and pounce and sun. Even if another day would find Zampano elsewhere, far from the sun, this sun, flung face down on his ill-swept floor, without so much as a clue. No trauma, just old age, the paramedics would say, though they can never explain. No one could. What they found near where he lay, 4 of them, 6 or 7 inches long and a half an inch deep, splintering the wood, left by some terrible, awful thing, signature in script of steel or claws, though not Santa. Zampano died after Christmas after all, but no myth either, for I saw the impossible marks near the trunk, touched them, even caught some splinters in my fingertips, some of their unexpected sadness and mourning, which, though dug out later with a safety pin, I swear still fester beneath my skin, reminding me in a peculiar way of him, just like other splinters I still carry, though these much deeper, having never been worked out by the body, but quite the contrary, worked into the body, by now long since buried, calcified and fused to my very bones, taking me further from the warm frolic of years, reminding me of much colder days where I left death, or thought I had. I am tripping. Overcast in tones December gray, recalling names. I have tripped. Swept in Ohio sleet and rain, ruled by a man with a beard rougher than horsehide and hands harder than horn, who called me beast because I was his boy, though he wasn't my father, which is another story, another place I'm here to avoid, as I'm certain there are places you too have sought to avoid, just as one of Zampano's early readers also found a story she wanted to avoid, though she finally told me it, or at least some of it, how she departed from the old man's apartment at nightfall, having just endured hours of speech on comfort, death and legend, not to speak of mothers and daughters and birds and bees and feathers and suns and cats and dogs, all of it distressing her, saddening her, confusing her, and thus leaving her completely unprepared for the memory she was about to find, abruptly returning from her childhood in Santa Cruz, even as she was trying to reorient herself into a familiar setting in the comforting routine of a long walk back to her car. It had been raining there, pouring in fact, though not on Franklin and Whitley. Suddenly noticing the unnatural heaviness of a shadow, slipping free from the burnt desk, though not a shadow at all. Later translating this as a sight of an enormous creature trespassing on the curve of a Northern California light, like the shadow she saw hiding in the bottom turn of Zampano's stairwell, moving towards her, and so causing her to panic and scramble into the comforts offered by a local bar, or that night scramble through the gate of Zampano's building, away from all that gloom, until only many hours and many drinks later could she finally fall asleep, her hangover the following day leaving her gratefully, she said, with only a fleeting memory of something white with ropes, of sea smoke and one terrifying flash of blue, which was more, she told me, than she could usually share, even if, which she wouldn't share, she knew it still wasn't even the half of it. And so now, in the shadow of unspoken events, I watch Zampano's courtyard darken. Everything whimsical is left. I try to study the light going carefully from my room, in the glass of memory, the moonstream of my imagination, the weeds, the windows, every bench, but the old man is not there, and the cats are all gone. Something else has taken their place. Something I am unable to see. Waiting. And a big blank page. It says, I am afraid. It is hungry. It is immortal. Worse, it knows nothing of whim. And that's the end of chapter 5. So chapter 5, if we're breaking it down, or that was chapter 6. Chapter 6, if we're breaking it down for notes, is you get the two passages about animals having, if they're self-aware about their own existence. And it's like, there was an article where there's a talking dog who uses buttons to communicate, and it knows like 200 words or something like that. And it got to the point to where it asked what happens when they die, when the dog dies. So they educated the dog so much that the dog was able to comprehend life and death, sort of nullifying these two quotes. But how many dogs can do that? It had to be taught that for a long time and then come to that thought on its own. So animals don't have that. Humans have that. And that's what these quotes are saying. So then in the House of Leaves, or the house, they had two pets, and the husky is older at the end of it, but the cat disappears, and the house has something to do with it. And I kind of want to call this, that my head hurts. My head is frying right now. I think I'm dehydrated, and I don't want to make a bad let me see something. Okay, I'm going to drink this water. We're going to power through chapter 7, and then I'm calling it. There's enough water in here too. Okay, I'll put that there. But the end note from Haas was just him rambling about cats, the cats that used to be there. So the only connection, and he gave Thumper a love note. Thumper responded, she laughed in his face in front of people, but then behind closed doors she gave him her card. So I think he ends up with her, I think. I'm guessing. All right, let's get started. My throat and my mouth are all dry. Let's see where this goes. And power through. Giving you everything again. Chapter 7. But all this, the mysterious far-reaching hairline trail, the absence of sun from the sky, the tremendous cold, and the strangeness and weirdness of it all, made no impression on the man. It was not because he was long used to it. He was a newcomer in the land. Chichiko? And this was his first winter. The trouble with him was that he was without imagination. Jack London, To Build a Fire. I've heard of To Build a Fire. I know that these quotes are real, in the real world, and the only thing that isn't is the Novitzin record so far, the actual film. The closest thing I can relate the Novitzin record and the way the house is the back rooms, right? That's the closest thing I can relate it to. I don't know, the back rooms, I know there's a whole lore about everything, but the way the back rooms exist, that's how this feels right now, with the way the house moves and everything, with the hallway from chapter 4 or 5, whatever. Chapter 5. Now we're on chapter 7. Okay, here we go. Power through. Holloway Roberts arrives carrying a rifle. In fact, in the very first shot, we see him In the very first shot we see of him, he emerges from a truck holding a Weatherby 300 Magnum. Even without weapons, though, Holloway would still be an intimidating man. He is broad and powerful with a thick beard and deeply creased brow. Dissatisfaction motivates him, and at 48 he still drives himself harder than any man half his age. Consequently, when he steps onto Novitzin's front lawn, arms folded, eyes scrutinizing the house, bees flying near his boots, he looks less like a guest and more like some conquistador landing on new shores, preparing for war. Born in Menomonee, Wisconsin, Holloway Roberts has made a career as a professional hunter and explorer. As travel writer Aramis Garcia Pineda commented, he is confident, leads well, and possesses a remarkable amount of brass ball courage. Over the past, some have resented his strength and drive, but most agree the sense of security one feels in his presence, especially in life-threatening situations, makes tolerating the irritating sides of his character well worth it. When Novitzin told Reston how Karen had explicitly asked him not to explore the hallway, he presumably Novitzin described the discoveries he made during Exploration A. The first person Reston called was Holloway. Reston had met Holloway 4 years earlier at a symposium on Arctic gear design held at Northwestern University. Holloway was one of the speakers invited to represent explorers. Not only did he clearly articulate the problems with current equipment, he also focused on what was needed to correct the problems. Though a fairly humorless speech, its conciseness impressed many people there, especially Reston, who bought the man a drink. A sort of friendship soon developed. "I always thought he was rock solid," Reston said much later in the Reston interview. "Just look at his CV. Never for a moment did I suspect he was capable of that." As it turned out, as soon as Holloway saw the tape of the 5.5-minute hallway, which Reston had sent him, he was more than willing to participate in an investigation. There was like a weird footnote with like a little explosion on it. Within a week, he arrived at the house, along with 2 employees, Jed Leader and Kirby Wax Hook. So Jed Leader and Kirby Wax Hook. As we learned in the Novitzin record, Jed Leader lives in Seattle, though he was originally from Vineland, New Jersey. Vineland? He had actually been on his way to becoming a career truck driver, and when a transcontinental job took him all the way to Washington. It was there that he discovered the great outdoors was not just some myth conjured up in a magazine. He was 27 when he first saw the Cascades. One look was all he needed. Love at first sight. He quit his job on the spot and started selling camping gear. 6 years later, he is still long away from Vineland. And as we can see for ourselves, his passion for the Pacific Northwest and the great outdoors only seems to have grown more intense. Consummately shy, also to the point in frailty, Jed possesses an uncanny sense of direction and remarkable endurance. Even Holloway concedes that Jed would probably outdistance him in a packless climb. When he is not trekking, Jed loves drinking coffee, watching the tide turn, and listening to Lyle Lovett with his fiancée. "She's from Texas," he tells us very softly. "I think that's where we're going to get married." Wax Hook could not be more different. At 26, he is the youngest member of the Holloway team. Born in Aspen, Colorado, he grew up on mountain faces and in the cave shafts. Before he could walk, he knew where to drive a pitone, and before he could talk, he had a whole vocabulary of knots under his fingers. If there is such a thing as a climbing prodigy, Wax is it. By the time he dropped out of high school, he had climbed more peaks than most climbers have climbed in a lifetime. In one clip, he tells us how he plans to eventually make a solo ascent of Everest North Face. And I'll tell you this, more than a few people are betting, I'll do it. When Wax was 23, Holloway hired him as a guide. For the next 3 years, Wax helped Holloway and Jed led teams up to Mount McKinley, down into Ellison's Cave in Georgia, or across some Nepalese CWM. The pay was not much to brag about, but the experience was worth plenty. Wax sometimes gets a little out of hand. He likes to drink, get laid, and most of all boasts about how much he drank and how many times he got laid. But he never brags about climbing. Booze and women are one thing, but a rocky face is always better than you, and if you make it down alive, you're grateful you had a good trip. This though has to be the weirdest, Wax later tells Novitzin right before making his last foray down the hallway. When Holloway asked me, If I wanted to explore a house, I thought he was cracked. But whatever Holloway does is interesting to me. So sure, I went for it. And sure enough, this is the weirdest. On the day Holloway and his team arrive at Ash Tree Lane, Vincent and Tom are there to greet them at the door. Karen says a brief hello and leaves to pick the children up from school. Reston makes the necessary introductions, and then after everyone has gathered in the living room, Vincent begins to explain what he knows about the hallway. He shows them a map he drew based on his first visit. Tellingly, this hardly strikes Tom as news, while Vincent does his best to impress upon everyone the dangers posed by the tremendous size of that place, as well as the need to record in detail every part of the exploration. Tom passes out Xerox copies of his brother's diagram. Jed finds it difficult to stop smiling, while Wax finds it difficult to stop laughing. Holloway keeps throwing glances at Reston. In spite of the tape he saw, Holloway seems convinced that Vincent has more than a few loose wing nuts jangling around in his cerebral cortex. But when the 4 deadbolts are at least unlocked and the hallway door drawn open, the icy darkness instantly slaughters every smile and glance. Newt Colster suspects the first view of that place irreparably altered something in Holloway. His face loses color. Something even close to panic suffuses his system. Suddenly he sees what fortune has plopped on his plate, and how famous and rich it could make him. And he wants it. He wants all of it. Immediately, no matter the cost. Studying Holloway's reaction, it is almost impossible to deny how serious he gets staring down the hallway. How far back does it go? He finally asks. You're about to find out, Vincent replies, sizing up the man, a half smile on his lip. Just be careful on the shifts. From the first time they shake hands on the doorstep, it is obvious to us that Vincent and Holloway dislike each other. Neither one says anything critical, but both men bristle in each other's presence. Holloway is probably a little unnerved by Vincent's distinguished career. Vincent, no doubt, is privately licensed, that he must ask another man to explore his own house. Holloway does not make his intrusion any easier. He is cocky, and following Vincent's little introduction, immediately starts calling the shots. In earlier years, Vincent would have probably paid little attention to Karen and headed down those corridors by himself. Danger be damned. Yet, as has already been discussed, the move to Virginia was about repairing their crumbling relationship. Karen would refrain from relying on other men to mollify her insecurities if Vincent curbed his own lust and gave domestic oh my god. Well, I'm just saying domestic life a real shot, because that's all that word is. After all, as Karen later intimated, their home was supposed to bring them closer together. The appearance of the hallway, however, tests those informal vows. Vincent finds himself constantly itching to leave his family for that place, just as Karen discovers old patterns surfacing in herself. Later that evening, Holloway places his hand on Karen's back and makes her laugh with a line the camera never hears. Vincent immediately bumps Holloway aside with his shoulder, revealing for one thing his own easily underestimated strength. Vincent, however, reserves his glare for Karen. She laughs it off, but the uneasy energy released recalls Leslie Buckman and Dale Corrigan's accusations. Oh, so the house is changing them. My throat is so dry. The house is changing their behavior. He's like his old ways. He's like, you know what? If she wasn't here, I'd be doing this no matter what. And she's like, Holloway's kind of cute. Holloway flirting with Karen. Yet, even after Vincent's interjection, Holloway still finds it difficult to keep his eyes off Karen. Her flirting hardly helps. I just fucking called it. Her flirting hardly helps. She is bright, extremely sexual, and just as Vincent has always enjoyed danger, she has always thrived on attention. Karen brings the men beers, and they go outside with her and light her cigarettes. It matters very little what they say. Her eyes always flash. She gives them that famous smile, and sure enough, soon they are all doting on her. Vincent confides to his high... So, video journal. Excuse me. I can't tell you how much I'd like to deviate that fucker's septum. He's talking about Holloway. And then later on mutters somewhat enigmatically, For that I should throw her out. Still aside from these comments and the strong nudge he gave Holloway, Novitzin refrains from openly displaying any other signs of jealousy or rage. Unfortunately, he also refrains from openly considering the significance of these feelings. The closest he comes appears in a high 8 journal entry spliced in following his encounter with Holloway. On camera, Novitzin treats what he refers to as his rotten feet. As we can clearly see, the tops are puffy and in some places as red as clay. Furthermore, all his toenails are horribly cracked, disfigured, and yellow. Perpetuated, Novitzin informs us, by a nasty fungus 2 decades worth of doctors finally ended up calling stress. Sitting by himself on the edge of the tub, blood-stained socks draped over the edge, he carefully spreads a silky ointment around what he glibly calls his light fantastic toe. It is one of the more naked moments of Novitzin, and especially considering its placement in the sequence seems to reveal in a non-verbal way some of the anxiety Karen's flirtation with Holloway has provoked in him. All of which becomes pretty irrelevant as Holloway soon spends most of his hours leading his team down that lightless hallway. Frequently, treatment of the first 3 explorations has concentrated on the physical aspects of the house. Florencia Calzati, however, has shown in her compelling book, The Fraying of the American Family, no longer in print, how these invasions begin to strip the Novitzins of any existing cohesion. It is an interesting examination of the complex variables implicit in any intrusion. Unfortunately, understanding Calzati's work is not at all easy, as she makes her case using a peculiar idiom no reader will find readily comprehensible. And then the references, refer, footnotes, fortune. I'm just seeing if anything is significant in here. Are these still references? Alright, so this is... I'm just going to read this reference, which is 90, refers to footnotes 19 and 20 concerning Karen's infidelities. Perhaps it is also should be noted here that for all his wanderings, Novitzin is pointedly not promiscuous. Good looks, intelligence, and fame did not combine to create an adulterous lifestyle. Iona Panofsky, in Saint Sinners and Photojournalists, attributes Novitzin's genius to his monk-like existence. However, Australian native Ryan Murray, in his book Wilder Ways, calls Novitzin monastic habits a sure sign of unresolved oedipal, anxieties, repressed homosexuality, and a disturbed sense of self. Considering the time spent away from home, coupled with the kind of offers he got from most exotic and tantalizing women, not even including those from his numerous female assistants, his refusal proves a nauseating absence of character. Make no mistake about it. Over here, his kind enter a bar with a smile and leave with a bar stool for their hat. An odd thing to say, considering Novitzin drank freely in every Australian bar he ever visited, and on one occasion when he was attacked by 2 drunks, purportedly angry over all the attention waitresses were lavishing on him, both inebriates left bruised and bleeding. Holloway, Jed and Wax appear as only instruments in the houses encoded as the patient. No doubt inspired by Calzati, a small group of other writers, including the poet L4 O'Halloran, have continued to mull over the dynamics brought on by Holloway's arrival. Without focusing too closely on the fine filigree of detail presented in these pieces, a book in itself, it is worthwhile, however, briefly to track the narrative events of the 3 explorations and recite to some degree how they affect the Novitzins. For Exploration 1, Holloway, Jed, and Wax enter the hallway equipped with high 8s, down parkas, hats, Gore-Tex gloves, powerful halogen lamps, extra batteries, and a radio to keep in contact with Novitzin, Tom, and Reston. Novitzin ties one end of some fishing line to the hallway door and then hands the spool to Holloway. There's almost 2 miles of line here, he tells him. Don't let go of it. Karen says nothing when she hears Novitzin makes this comment, though she does get up abruptly to go out to the backyard and smoke a cigarette. It is particularly eerie to watch Holloway and his team disappear down the long hallway, while just outside, Karen paces back and forth in the light of a September day, oblivious of the space she repeatedly crosses, though, for whatever reason, cannot penetrate. An hour later, Holloway, Jed, and Wax return. When their high 8 tapes are replayed in the living room, we watch along with everyone else. How a series of lefts eventually leads them to the apparently endless corridor. Which, again to the left, offers entrance into that huge space where Novitzin almost got lost. Though Holloway's ability to shoot this trip hardly compares to the expertise evident in Novitzin's Exploration A, it is still thrilling to follow the trio as they investigate the darkness. As they quickly discover the void above them is not infinite. Their flashlights, much more powerful than Novitzin's, illuminate a ceiling at least 200 feet high. A little later, at least 1,500 feet away, they discover an opposing wall. What no one is prepared for, however, is the even larger entrance waiting for them, opening to an even greater void. Two things keep them from proceeding further. One, Holloway runs out of fishing line. In fact, he briefly considers setting the spool down when two, he hears a growl Novitzin had warned them about. A little rattled by the sound, Holloway decides to turn back in order to better consider their next move. As Novitzin foretold, they soon see for themselves how all the walls have shifted, though not as severely as they had for Novitzin. Fortunately, the changes have not severed the fishing line, and the three men find their way back to the living room with relative ease. Exploration 2 takes place the following day. This time Holloway carries with him 4 spools of fishing line, several flares, and some neon markers. He eventually ignores Novitzin, putting Wax in charge of a 35mm camera and instructing Jed on how to collect scratchings from all the walls they pass along the way. Reston provides the dozen or so sample jars, though Exploration 2 ends up lasting over 8 hours. Holloway, Jed, Wax only hear the growl once, and the resulting shifts are negligible. The first hallway seems narrower, the ceiling a little lower, and while some of the rooms they pass look larger, for the most part everything has remained the same. It is almost as if continued use deters the growl and preserves the path they walk. Aside from feeling generally incensed by what he perceives as Holloway's postured authority, Novitzin almost goes berserk listening to the discoveries on the radio. Reston and Tom try to cheer him up, and to Novitzin's credit, he tries to act cheerful. But when Jed announces they have crossed what he names the anteroom and entered what Holloway starts calling the Great Hall, Novitzin finds it increasingly more difficult to conjure even a smile. Radio psychologist Fanny Lampkins believes this is a clear-cut example of the classic male struggle for dominance. It's bad enough to hear the Great Hall has a ceiling at least 500 feet high with a span that may approach a mile, but when Holloway radios that they found a staircase in the center which is over 200 feet in diameter and spirals down onto nothing, Novitzin has to hand Reston the radio, unable to muster another word of support. He has been deprived of the right to name what he inherently understands as his own. Lampkin sees Novitzin's willingness to obey Karen's injunction as a sacrifice on part with sacrification, though invisible to Karen. After Holloway's team returns, Jed tries to describe the staircase. It was enormous. We dropped a few flares down it, but we never heard them hit bottom. I mean, in that place, it being so empty and cold and still and all, you really can hear a pin drop, but the darkness just swallowed the flares right up. Wax nods and then adds with a shake of his head, "It's so deep, man. It's like almost a dream. It's almost dreamlike." This last comment is actually not uncommon, especially for individuals who find themselves confronting vast tenebrific spaces. Back in the mid-60s, American cavers tackled the Sotano de las Golondrinas, an incredible 1,092-foot hole in Mexico's Sierra Madre Oriental. They used rope, rappel packs, and mechanical ascenders to make the descent. Later on, one of the cavers described his experience. "I was supposed to be in a giant dome with thousands of birds circling in small groups near the vague back cloth of the 4 walls. Moving slowly down the rope, I had a feeling that I was descending into an illusion and would soon become part of it as the distance became unrelatable and entirely unreal." How much is this? Okay, hold on. Oh, that's not it. Hold on. My brain is getting whatever. Okay, I have 5. I can do this. Where's my sticker? Alright, let's do this. Power through. What happened, Chad? Wait, where am I at? I lost my way. Hold on. Apparently, feng shui. I'm in the wrong. No, I'm not. Oh, it's right here. Found you, Elsa. See, that's why we leave Elsa. Okay, we got this. I have a headache. My head's pounding. I want to lay down. Has soon become part of it, and distance became unrelatable, entirely unreal. When Holloway plays back the high eights for everyone, Davidson's frustrations get the best of him. He leaves the room. It hardly helps that Karen stays, entirely engrossed in Holloway's presentation and the ghostly, if inadequate, images of the banister frozen on the monitor. Tom actually pulls her aside and tries to convince her to let Davidson lead the next exploration. Wait, what? It hardly helps that Karen stays, entirely engrossed in Holloway's presentation of the ghostly, if inadequate, images of a banister frozen on the monitor. Tom actually pulls her aside and tries to convince her to let Davidson lead the next exploration. Oh, so Will's brother is like, yo, Karen, you gotta let him do this. Tom, she replies defensively, nothing's stopping Navi. If he wants to go, he can go. But then I go too. That's our deal. He knows that. You know that. Tom seems a little shocked by her anger until Karen directs his attention to Chad and Daisy, sitting in the kitchen, working hard at not doing their homework. Look at them, she whispers. Navi's had a lifetime of wandering in danger. He can let someone else take over now. It won't kill him, but losing him would kill them. It would kill me too. I want to grow old, Tom. I want to grow old with him. Is that such an awful thing? Her words clearly register with Tom, who perhaps also perceives what a great toll his brother's death would have on him as well. When he sees Davidson next, Tom tells him to go find his son. Based on what we can tell from the Davidson record, it appears that Chad soon got fed up with this class assignment and took off down the street with Hillary. Determined to explore his own dark, he took off with Hillary, determined to explore his own dark. Davidson had to look for almost an hour before he finally found him. Chad, it turned out, was in the park filling a jar full of fireflies. Instead of scolding him, Davidson helped out. By 10, they had returned home with jars full of light and hands sticky with ice cream. So that was exploration number 2. Exploration number 3 ends up lasting almost 20 hours, relying primarily on the team's radio transmissions interspersed with a few clips from the high eights. Davidson relates how Holloway, Jed, and Wax take 45 minutes to reach the spiral staircase, only to spend the next 7 hours walking down it. When they at last stop and drop a flare, still does not illuminate or sound a bottom. Jed notes that the diameter has also increased from 200 feet to well over 500 feet. It takes them over 11 hours to return. Unlike the 2 previous explorations, this intrusion brings them face to face with the consequences of the immensity of that place. All 3 men come back cold, depleted, their muscles aching, their enthusiasm gone. I got some vertigo, Jed confesses. I had to step way back from the edge and sit down. That was a first for me. Wax is more cavalier, claiming to have felt no fear, though for some reason he is more exhausted than the rest. Holloway remains the most stoic, keeping any doubts to himself, adding only that the experience is beyond power of any high 8 or 35mm camera. It's impossible to photograph what we saw. Even after seeing Davidson's accomplished shots, it is hard to disagree with Holloway. The darkness recreated in a lab or television set does not begin to tell the true story, whether chemical clots determining black or video gray approximating its absence. The images still remain 2-dimensional. In order to have a third dimension, depth cues are required, which in the case of a stairway means more light. The flares, however, barely illuminate the size of that bore. In fact, they are easily extinguished by the very thing they are supposed to expose. Only knowledge illuminates that bottomless place, disclosing the deep ultimately absent in all the tapes and stills, those strange carte visites. It is unfortunate that Holloway's images cannot even be counted as approximations of that vast abrupt, where, as Rilke wrote, Aber da in diesem schwarzen Fälle, where den Starkes schon auf Geolast. And that's 98. 90. No idea. Actually, Lude had a German friend named Kyrie, a tall, blonde-haired beauty who spoke Chinese, Japanese, and French, drank beer, by the court, trained for triathlons when she wasn't playing competitive squash, made 6 figures a year as a corporate consultant, and loved to fuck. Lou took heed when I told him I needed a German translation and introduced us. Excuse me, I have to burp. As it turned out, I'd met her before, about 5 or so months ago. It actually had been a little tricky. I was learning about pretty obliterated in the hours of drink, actually, feeling like days of drink, when this monstrous guy loomed up in front of me, grumbling insensibly about the bad behavior, something concerning too much talk with too much gesture. Gestures toward her. That much of the grumble, the her bit, I understood. He meant Kyrie, of course, who even back then was a blonde-haired beauty, writing my name in Japanese and assigning all sorts of pretentious things to it. Things I was hoping to lead, or was it follow? Elsewhere, when this prehistoric shithead, reeking of money and ignorance, interposed himself, cursing, spitting, and threatening, in fact so loud and mean, Kyrie had to interpose herself, which only made matters worse. He reached over her and hit me in the forehead with the heel of his hand. Not hard, more like a shove, but a strong enough shove to push me back a few feet. Well, look at that, I remember hollering. He has an opposable thumb. The monster wasn't amused. It didn't matter. The alcohol in me had already quickened and fled. I stood there tingling all over. A dangerous clarity returned to me. Ancient bloodlines colluding under what I imagine now must have been the very aegis of Mars. My fingers itching to weld into themselves, while directly beneath my sternum a hammer struck the timeless bell of war, a call to arms, though all of it still held back by what? Words, I guess? Or rather a voice? Though whose, I have no clue. He was twice my size, bigger and stronger. That should have mattered. For some reason it didn't. Odds were he'd rip me to pieces, probably even try to stop me. And yet part of me still wanted to find out for sure. Luckily the alcohol returned. I got wobbly and then I got scared. Lude was yelling at me, "You got a death wish, Truant?" Which was the thing that scared me, because maybe I did. Oh my gosh, how much? 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 months or so later, Lude arranged for me to meet Kyrie at Union. I was late by an hour. I had an excuse. Every time I tried to open my door, my heart started racing for a bypass. I had to sit down and wait for the thumping to calm. This went on for almost 50 minutes, until I finally just gave up, gritted my teeth, and charged out into the night. Of course I recognized Kyrie immediately, and she recognized me. She was getting ready to leave when I arrived. I apologized and begged her to stay, making up some lame excuse about police trying to save a guy in my building who'd stuck his head into a microwave. She looked wonderful, and her voice was soft, and offered me something Thumper had taken away when she hadn't called me back. She even wrote down on a napkin the glyph she'd created for me half a year ago to reflect my name in nature. Before I could order a drink, a Jack and Coke, she told me her boyfriend was out of town, working on some construction site in Poland, single-handedly dislodging supertankers stuck in dry dock in Dansk, or he wasn't going to be back for a few more weeks. Before I even took a sip of my drink, Kyrie was complaining about all the people filtering in and around us, and then I finished my drink in one long gulp. She suggested we go for a drive in her new 2-door BMW coupe. Sure, I said, feeling vaguely uneasy about wandering too far from where I lived, which I realized as I took second to think that out was absolutely absurd. What the fuck was happening to me? My apartment's a dump. There's nothing there for me, not even sleep. Cat naps are fine, but for some reason deep REM is getting more and more difficult to achieve. Definitely not a good thing. Fortunately, I was falling under the spell of Kyrie's blue eyes, like sea ice, almost inhuman, reminding me again, as she herself had already pointed out, that she was alone. Dansk man, more than half a world-spinning world away. In the parking lot, we slipped into her bucket seats and quickly swallowed 2 tabs of ecstasy. Kyrie took over from there. At nearly 90 miles per hour, she zipped us up to that windy edge known to some as Mulholland, a sinuous road running the ridge of the Santa Monica Mountains, where she then proceeded to pump her vehicle in and out of turns, sometimes dropping down to 50 miles per hour, only to immediately gun it back to 90 again. Fast, slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, sometimes a wide turn, sometimes a quick one. She preferred the tighter ones, the sharp controlled jerk, swinging left to right, before driving back to the right, only so she could do it all over again. until after enough speed and enough wind and more distance than I'd been prepared to expect, taking me to parts of the city I rarely think of and never visit, she dipped down into some slower offshoot, a lane of lightless coves. Not stopping there either, but pushing further on until she finally found a secluded spot she'd been heading for all along, overlooking the city, far from anyone, pedestrian or home, and yet directly beneath the street lamp, which, as far as I could tell, was the only street lamp around for miles. See, all that twittering light flooding down through the sunroof really turned her on. I can't remember the inane things I started babbling about then. I know it didn't really matter. She wasn't listening. She just yanked on my emergency brake, dropped her seat. She just yanked up on the emergency brake, dropped her seat back, and told me to lie on top of her. On top of those leather pants of hers. Extremely expensive leather pants, mind you. Her hands immediately guiding mine over those soft, slightly oily folds, positioning my fingers on the shiny metal tab, small and round like a tear. Then murmuring a murmur so inaudible that even though I could feel her lips tremble against my ear, she seemed far, far away. Pinch it, she said, which I did lightly until she also said, pull it, which I also did, gently parting teeth one at a time, down, under, and beneath, the longest unzipping of my life, all the way down right beneath her perfectly oval navel to the tiny tattoo, a Japanese sign, the meaning of which I never guessed, marking her lower back, and not a stitch of underwear to get in the way. The rest very guessable, though. Don't underestimate the danger, which I guess really wasn't so dangerous at all. We never even kissed, or looked into each other's eyes. Our lips just trespassed on those inner labyrinths hidden deep within our ears, filled them with the private music of wicked words, hers in many languages, mine in the off-color of my only tongue, until as our tones shifted, and our consonants spun and squealed, rattled faster, hesitated, raced harder, syllables soon melting with groans and moans, finding purchase in new words, or old words, or made-up words, until we gathered up our heat and refused to release it, enjoying too much the dark language we had suddenly stumbled upon, craved to, carved to, not a communication really, but a channeling of our rumored desires, hers for all I know gone to black forest and wolves, mine banging back to a familiar form, that great revenant mystery I still could only hear the shape of, which in spite of our separate lusts and individual cries still continued to drive us deeper into strange tones, our mutual desire to keep gripping and burn filled by sound, hers screeching, mine, I didn't hear mine, only hers, probably counterpointing mine, a high-pitched cry, then a whisper dropping unexpectedly to practically a bark, a grunt, whatever, no sense anymore, and suddenly no more curves either, just a straight away, some line crossed, where every fractured sound already spoken finally compacts into one long agonizing word, easily exceeding 100 letters, even thunder, anticipating the inevitable letting go, when the heat is ultimately too much to bear, threatening to burn, scar, tear it all apart, yet tempting enough to hold on to for even 1 second more, to extend it all if we can, as if by getting that much closer to the heat, that much more enveloped, would prove, which, when we did clutch, hold, postpone, did in fact prove too much after all, seconds too much, and impossible to refuse, so blowing all of everything apart, shivers and shakes and deep in her throat, 1,000 letters crashing in a long, unmodulated fall, resonating deep within my cochlea, and down the cochlear nerve, a last fit to a fury describing in lasting detail the shape of things had already come. Too bad dark languages rarely survive. As quickly as they're invented, they die, unable to penetrate much, explore anything, or even connect. Terribly beautiful, but more often than not inadequate. So I guess it's no surprise that what I recall now with the most clarity is actually pretty odd. When Kyrie dropped me off, she burped. At the time, I thought it was kind of cute, but I guess man-eater did cross my mind. Then as I opened the door, she burst into tears. All she was in that $85,000 car could not exclude the little girl. She said something about dance man, disinterest in her, and fucking her, even in touching her, running away to Poland, and then she apologized, blamed the drugs still roaming around in her veins, and told me to get out. Resistance to representation, however, is not the only difficulty posed by those replicating chambers and corridors, as Karen discovers the whole house defies any normal means of determining direction. Apparently, while Karen had been struggling with explorers' invasions of her home, her mother had managed to acquire the number of a feng shui master in Manhattan. After a long conversation with this expert, Karen is relieved to learn that she has been putting all the ceramic, animals, crystals, and plants in wrong places. She is still told to use the Pao Kua table, I Ching and the Lo Shu magic square, but to do so with the assistance of a compass, since much of the feng shui, especially in the compass school, relies on auspicious and inauspicious directions. It is crucial to get an accurate reading on how the house sits in relationship to points north, south, east, and west. Karen immediately goes out and buys a compass. This while the men are in the midst of exploration too. Wouldn't Holloway have a compass? Upon returning home, however, she is astonished to find the compass refuses to settle in any one direction. Inside the house. Assuming it must be broken, she drives back down and exchanges it for a new one. Apparently this time she tests it in a store. Satisfied, she returns to the house, only to discover that once again the compass is useless. No matter what room she stands in, whether in the back or front, upstairs or downstairs, the needle never stays still. North, it seems, has no authority there. Tom confirms a strange phenomenon, and during Exploration 3, Holloway, who up till then has relied solely on neon arrows and fishing lines to mark their path, demonstrates how the same holds true for a compass thread within those ash-like halls. I'll be damned, Holloway grunts, as he stares at the twitching needle. I guess all we've got now is your sense of direction, Watch jokingly tells Jed, which, as Luther Shepard wrote, only helps to emphasize how real the threat was of getting lost in there. Oh my gosh, how much more? I can't. 1, 2. I think I have to call it. My head is throbbing. My mouth is dry. So this is what I'll do. I'm going to call it. I'm just fucking kidding. We're going to power through. Did Holloway quit? Did Novitzin quit? No. We power through this. Oh no. Everything's falling apart. Okay. Come on, camera. See, look, even the camera's quitting on me. Okay, is that better? Okay. Alright. Let's do this. In light of this new development, and in preparation for exploration number 4, Tom makes several trips into town to purchase more fishing line, neon markers, and anything else that might serve to mark the team's path. Since Holloway's plan is to spend at least 5 nights inside, Tom also picks up extra food and water. On one of those excursions, he even takes Daisy and Chad along. No High 8 records their trip, but the way Chad and Daisy relate to their mother, the details of their shopping spree reveals how fond they have become of their uncle. Unfortunately, Tom also has to buy a ticket back to Massachusetts, with the exception of a few weeks in July. Oh, hold on. Let me fix my chair. That usually helps too. 1, 2, 1, 2. Get my chair going. Okay. Scoot this in. The pillow's upside down, whatever. Unfortunately, Tom also has to buy a ticket back to Massachusetts. With the exception of a few weeks in July, he has not worked in over 3 months. As Tom explains to Karen Novitzin, the time's come for me to put ass in gear and get on with my life. He also tells them the time has come for them to contact the media and find a new house. Originally, Tom intended to leave right after exploration number 3, but when Novitzin begs him to stay through exploration number 4, he agrees. Excuse me. Reston also sticks around. He had briefly considered taking a leave of absence from the university, but managed instead to somehow arrange for a week off. Despite the fact that it is late September and the fall semester has already begun, he and Tom both live at the house. Tom in the study, Reston crashing on the pull-out in the living room. while Holloway, Jed, and Wax, at least up until exploration number 4, stay at a local motel. From all the clips leading up to exploration number 4, we can see how both Novitzin and Holloway expect to gain a great deal of fame and fortune. Even if Holloway's team does not reach the bottom of the staircase, both men agree their story will guarantee them national attention as well as research grants and speaking opportunities. Holloway's company will more than likely thrive, to say nothing more of the reputations of all those involved. This kind of talk on the day before exploration number 4 is scheduled to start. Actually manages to bring Novitzin and Holloway a little closer together. There is still a good deal of unspecified tension between them, but Holloway warms to discussions of success, especially to the idea of, to use Novitzin's words, going down in history. Perhaps Holloway imagines himself joining Novitzin's world, what he perceives as a place for the esteemed, secure, and remembered. Nevertheless, what these short clips do not show is the paranoia growing within him. As we are well aware, future events will ultimately reveal how much Holloway feared Novitzin would get rid of him and thus deprive him of the recognition he had spent a lifetime trying to obtain, the recognition the house seemed to promise. Of course, Karen will have nothing to do with such talk. Upon hearing what the men are discussing, she angrily withdraws to the periphery of the house. She clearly despises anything that might suggest a longer, more protracted relationship with the oddities of their home. Daisy, on the other hand, keeps close to Novitzin, picking at any tiny scabs on her wrist, always sitting on her father's shoulders, or when that proves impossible, on Tom's. Chad turns out to be the most problematic. He spends more and more time outside by himself, and that afternoon returns home from school with a bruised eye and a swollen nose. Did I skip this? We're getting lost in there. Only emphasize how real they're getting lost in there. In the light of this new development, she was so, in the end, the whole thing. I did skip this part, so I thought this was footnotes. I gotta read this. She was still crying when she drove off. In the end, the whole thing had been so frantic and fast, and strange, and even sad in some ways. I completely forgot to ask her about the German phrase. I suppose I could call her. Lude has her number, but for some reason these days dialing 7, let alone 11 numbers feels like an infinite stretch. The phone's right in front of me, but it's out of reach. When it rings at 4 a.m., again, I don't answer it. All I have to do is extend my hand, but I can't run that far. Sleep never really arrives, not even rest. There's no satisfaction anymore. Morning shrinks space, but leaves no messages. But here within the thick black pelt, your strongest gaze... Oh, this is okay, we're going into references. Okay. It's footnotes. So, yeah. So, she left. He didn't ask her, and they're done. Novitzin breaks off his conversation with Holloway to find out what happened. Chad, however, refuses to speak, which is not really a good response. And changing the details or changing the subject can be just the same as refusing to speak. I guess I've been guilty of those two things for a long time now, especially the first one. Always shifting and reshifting details, smoothing out the edges, removing the corners, colorizing the whole thing, or if need be, decolorizing, sometimes even flying in a whole chorus of cartoon characters, complete with slapstick, biff, blam, pow antics. This time leave in the blam, which may have been some appeal, can't underrate the amusement factor there. Even though it's so far from the truth, it might as well be cartoon because it certainly isn't what happened. No Bugs Bunny there, no Thumper, no Biff, blam, pow, either. No, nothing of the kind. And fuck, now I know exactly where I'm going to place. Now I know exactly where I'm going. A place I've already managed to avoid twice. The first time with fictive tooth improv. The second time with that quick dart north to Santa Cruz and the troubles of a girl I barely know. Though here I am again, right at this moment too, again heading straight for it, which I suppose I could still resist. I'm resisting, maybe not. I mean, I could always just stop, do something else, light up a joint, get swollen on booze. In fact, doing virtually anything at all, aside from this, would keep me from relating the real story behind my broken tooth, though I don't know if I want to. Not relate that story, I mean, not anymore. I actually think it would do me some good to tell it, put it down here, at least some of it, so I can see the truth of it, see the details, revisit that taste, that time, maybe reevaluate or re-understand, or I don't know. Besides, I can always burn it when I'm done. After my father died, I was shipped around to a number of foster homes. I was trouble wherever I went. No one knew what to do with me. Eventually, though, it did take a while, I ended up with Raymond and his family. He was a former Marine, as I've already described, a beard rougher than horsehide, his hands harder than horn. He was also a total control freak. No matter the means, no matter the cost, he was going to be in control. And everyone knew if push came to shove, he was likely to die for it as he was to kill for it. I was 12 years old. What did I know? I pushed. I pushed all the time. Then one night, late at night, much closer to dawn than dusk, while I still gathered outside along the window frames and tessellated walks, I walk up to find Raymond squatting on my bed, wearing his black dirt-covered boots, chewing on a big chunk of beef jerky, jabbing me in the face with his fingers, murdering all remnants of sterno or park dreams. Beast, he said when he was satisfied. Sleep completely dead. Let's get and understand. Oh, he's calling that beast. He's saying it to him. Beast, he said when he was satisfied sleep was completely dead. Let's get an understanding going. You're not really in this family, but you're living with this family. Been living in us for near a year. So what does that make you? I didn't answer. The smart move. That makes you a guest. And being a guest means you act like a guest, not some kind of barnyard animal. If that doesn't suit you, then I'll treat you like an animal, which it will have to suit you. And what I'm saying about your behavior don't just go for here either. It goes for that school too. I don't want no more problems. You clear? Again, I didn't say anything. He leaned closer, forcing on me that rank smell of meat clinging to his teeth. If you understand that, then you and I aren't going to cross no more. Which was all he said. Then he squatted there on my bed for a while longer. The next day I fought in a schoolyard until my knuckles were bloody, and then I fought the following day and the day after that. A whole week, 15 faceless assailants racing after me right when school rang out. Mostly 8th graders, but a few 9th graders too, always bigger than me, telling me no 7th grade newcomer ever gets a say back. But I always said back. I bounced all of it right back. Back off whenever they gave me even the slightest bit of shit, and they finally hurt me for doing it. Hurt me enough to make me give up and die. Just curl up and cry, kicking the ground, my face all puffy, balls bashed and ribs battered, though something would always just pick me up from that fetal hold. Maybe in the end it was all nothing and I had to hold. It would throw me again after however was winning or just wanted to go next. After the 10th fight, something really poisonous got inside me and turned off all the pain. I didn't even register a hit or cut anymore. I heard the blow, but it never made it far enough along my nerves for me to even feel. As if all the feel meters had blown. So I just kept hacking back, spending everything I was against what I still didn't know. This one kid, he must have been 14 too. He hit me twice and figured I was down for good. I clawed up his face pretty bad then, enough for the blood to get in his eyes, and I don't think he expected it was ever going to get to that. I mean, there were rivulets on his parka and a lot of the snow, and he kind of froze up. Frightened, I guess, I don't know, but I apparently fractured his jaw and loosened a couple of his teeth. Then, split 3 of my knuckles too. Gloves were not an option in this kind of fighting. Anyway, he's the kid that got me expelled. But since the fight had taken place after school, it took all the next day for the administrators to put the pieces together. In the meantime, I fought 3 more times, right at noon recess. Friends of the 9th grader came after me. I couldn't punch too well with my broken knuckles, and they kept pushing me down and kicking me. Some teachers finally pulled them off, but not before I got my thumb in one of the kid's eyes. I heard he had blood in it for weeks. When I got home, Raymond was waiting for me. His wife had called him at the site and told him what had happened over the last week. Raymond had seen the bruises and cuts on my hands, but since the school hadn't called and I wasn't saying anything, he didn't say anything either. No one asked me what happened. Raymond just told me to get in the truck. I asked him where we were going. Even a question from me made him mad. He yelled at his daughters to go to their room. "I'm taking you to the hospital," he finally whispered. But we didn't go directly to the hospital. Raymond took me somewhere else first, where I lost half my tooth. And a lot more too, I guess. On the outskirts, in a nice covered place, surrounded by barbed wire and willows, where monuments of rust seldom touched, lie frozen alongside fence posts, and no one ever comes near enough to hear the hawks cry. Holloway, for this part, does not permit these domestic tensions and concomitant stresses to distract him from his preparations. The ever oblique Leon Robbins, in attempting to adequately evaluate these efforts, has gone so far as to suggest that operation would in fact be a far more appropriate word than exploration. Holloway in many ways resembles a conscientious medical practitioner in pre-op. Take, for example, how meticulously he reviews his team supplies the evening before. What I like to call Operation Number 4, he makes sure flashlights are all securely mounted on helmets and high-aids are properly attached to chest harnesses. He personally checks, rechecks, packs, and repacks all the tents, sleeping bags, thermal blankets, chemical heat packs, food, water, and first aid kits. Most of all, he confirms that they have ample amounts of neon markers, light sticks, 12 hours, ultra high intensity light sticks, spools of 4-pound test, 3,100 yard monofilament fishing line, flares, extra flashlights including a pumper light, a hand generated one, extra batteries, extra parts for the radios, and one altimeter, which acts like a compass will fail to function. Robin's medical analogy may be a little misguided, but his emphasis on Holloway's deliberate and careful planning reminds one of the technical demands required in this journey, whether in operation or exploration. After all, spending a night in an enclosed, lightless place is very uncommon, even in the world of caving. The La Chigula Crystal Cavern in New Mexico is one exception. Typically, LEC visits last 24 to 36 hours. Holloway, however, expects to take at least 4, possible 5 nights exploring the spiral staircase. Despite the detailed preparations and Holloway's infectious determination, everyone is still a little nervous. 5 nights is a long time to remain in freezing temperatures and complete darkness. No one knows what to expect. Though Wax puts his faith in Jed's unerring sense of direction, Jed admits to some pre-exploration apprehensions. How can I know where to go when I don't know where we are? I mean, really. Where is that place in relation to here? To us, to everything? Holloway tries to make sure everyone stays as busy as bees, and in an effort to keep them focused, creates a simple set of priorities. We're taking pictures, we're collecting samples, we're trying to reach the bottom of the stairs. Who knows? If we do that, then maybe we'll discover something before Novitzin starts all the hoopla involved with raising money and organizing large-scale explorations. Jed and Wax both nod, unaware of the darker implications inherent in what Holloway was just uttered. As Gavin Young later writes, who could have predicted that those 2 words, discover something, would prove the seeds of such unfortunate destruction? The problem, of course, was that the certain something Holloway so adamantly sought to locate never existed per se in that place to begin with. Unlike explorations 1 through 3, for exploration number 4, Holloway decides to take along his rifle. When Novitzin asks him what the hell he plans to shoot, Holloway replies, just in case. By this point, Novitzin has settled on the belief that the persistent growl is probably just a sound generated when the house alters in its internal layout. Holloway, however, is not at all in accordance with this assessment. Furthermore, as he pointedly reminds Novitzin, he is the team captain and the one responsible for everyone's safety. With all due respect, since I'm also the one actually going in there, your notions don't really hold much water with me. Wax and Jed do not object. They are accustomed to Holloway carrying some sort of firearm. The inclusion of the Weatherby handle hardly causes them any concern. Jed just shrugs. Wax, though, proves a little more fractious. I mean, what if you're wrong, he asks Novitzin. What if the sound's not from the walls shifting, but from something else, some kind of thing? You want to leave us defenseless? Novitzin drops the subject. The question of weapons aside, another big point of concern that comes up is communication. During exploration number 3, the team discovered just how quickly all their transmission deteriorated. Without a cost-effective way of rectifying the problem, obviously buying thousands of feet of audio cable would be impossible. Holloway settled the issue by simply announcing that they should just plan on losing radio contact by the first night. After that, it'll be 4 or 5 days on our own. Not ideal, but we'll manage. That evening, Holloway, Jed, and Wax move from their motel and camp out in the living room with Reston. Novitzin briefs Holloway for the last time on the most efficacious way to handle the cameras. I want to say efficacious. I don't know. Let's look it up. We haven't looked up the word today. It'll also give me like a little pause. Let's look it up. We're looking up Officius. What's with the firearm? I mean, nothing wrong. Something else. The question. Holloway settled. During exploration, quickly transmitted deteriorated. Not ideal, but we'll manage. The evening did. Move their motel. The most. EFFICACOUS. Efficacious. I was close. Okay. Last time on the most efficacious way to handle the cameras. Jed makes a brief call to his fiancée in Seattle and then helps Reston organize the sample jars. Tom, in an effort to cheer up a bruised and unnaturally quiet Chad, winds up reading both him and Daisy a long bedtime story. Somehow Wax ends up alone with Karen. If Holloway's hand on Karen had upset Davidson, it's hard to imagine what his reaction would have been had he walked in on his particular moment. However, when he finally did see the tape, so much had happened. Davidson, by his own admissions, felt nothing. I'm surprised, I guess, he says the last interview. But there's no rage. Just forget. I actually laughed a little. I'd been watching Holloway all the time, feeling insecure by this guy's strength and courage, and all that, and I never even thought about the kid. He shakes his head. Anyway, I betrayed her when I went in there the first time, and so she betrayed me. People will say how two people were meant for each other. Well, we weren't, but somehow we ended up together. Anyway, we had two incredible children. It's too bad I love her. It's too bad. I love her. I wish I didn't have to turn out like this. The clip of Karen and Wax did not appear in the first release print of the Davidson record, but apparently was edited a few months later. Miramax never commented on the inclusion, nor did anyone else. It is a little strange Karen did not erase the tape in the wall-mounted camcorder. Perhaps she forgot it was there or planned to destroy it later. Then again, perhaps she wanted Davidson to see it. Regardless of her intentions, the shot catches Karen and Wax alone in the kitchen. She picks out a bowl of popcorn. He helps himself to another beer. Their conversation circles tediously around Wax's girlfriends, intermittently returning to his desire to get married someday. Karen keeps telling him that he is young, he should have fun, keep living, stop worrying about settling down. For some reason, both of them speak very softly. On the counter, someone has left a copy of the map Davidson drew following Exploration A. Karen occasionally glances over at it. Did you do that? She finally asks. No, I can't draw. Oh, she says, letting a syllable hang in the air like a question. Wax shrugs. I actually don't know who made it. I thought your old Navy man did. Based on the film, it is impossible for us to tell if Holloway, Jed, or Wax were ever explicitly told not to mention to Karen Davidson's illegal excursion. Wax, however, does not seem to recognize any trespass in his admission. Karen does not look at the map again. She just smiles and takes a sip of Wax's beer. They continue talking more about Wax's girl troubles. Another of, don't worry, keep living, you're young. And then out of nowhere, Wax leans over and kisses Karen on the lips. It lasts less than a second and clearly shocks her. But when he leans over and kisses her again, she does not resist. In fact, the kiss turns into something more than a kiss. Karen's hunger almost exceeding Wax's. But when he knocks over his beer in an effort to get still closer, Karen pulls away, glances over at the liquid spilling onto the floor, and quickly walks out of the room. Wax starts to follow her, but realizes before he takes the second step that the game is already over. He cleans up the mess instead. A few months later, Davidson saw the kiss. By that time, Karen was gone along with everyone else. Nothing mattered. Bro, what happens after this? Oh my gosh. Okay. We made it. We made it. That was chapter whatever. How does this one start? Chapter 8. SOS. Oh, the first word is SOS. I can only imagine what happens in the cave. How many pages is this book? Oh, there's pictures in the back. I don't want to see anything. I'm using my brain. Alright, so that is part 5 of House of Leaves read along. My throat is hurting. I'm tired. My head is throbbing. It was throbbing hard earlier. Now it's sort of slowed down a little. The takeaway is that clearly Davidson and Karen split. The kids are gone. And I thought Holloway would be the one to get with Karen or do something. but it was the other guy, Wax. So I'm gonna end this. I don't know. Everything is too much right now. I'll listen to this and give more feedback in the next video. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, thank you for tolerating the pauses and the struggle. Tonight was a struggle. Tonight was passion because I wanted to see where the book goes. I could read the book by myself, but saying it out loud and reading it and going through it is a different energy. It's a different beast. It's like, it's not work. It's just a lot of effort and energy. And I'm tired. I don't feel good. My head hurts. So thank you if you spent time here. And we'll have the preamble for the next one on the 2 chapters we read. Although the first chapter we read today wasn't as convoluted or ambiguous. It was like, they're not ambiguous either. It's like, it's just the way it's written. So the first chapter was very direct compared to the other ones. This chapter was full of a lot of the correlation. Real quick, Haas and the girl, the Japanese girl, right? They hook up and she was with someone, and then that it was her fiance, and then Karen gets with Wax, and that's the like how they both intertwine that. And then Haas had broke the 4th wall again. So thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Good night. Oh, like and subscribe. God damn it.